The ice caves of Europa stretched endlessly beneath the moon's frozen surface, their crystalline walls reflecting the pale blue light of Thera Blackwood's survey drone. 10 years of exile from Earth's prestigious scientific community had led her here, to the edges of explored space, where she could continue her research without scrutiny or judgment. Temperature anomaly detected in Sector 7, the drone's AI chirped, its sensors picking up an unexpected heat signature deep within the glacial maze. Thera adjusted her thermal suit settings, her breath creating small clouds in the frigid air. She had explored dozens of these caves over the past months, but something about this reading was different. The cave narrowed as she descended, the walls closing in until she had to crouch to continue forward. The heat signature grew stronger, and with it came a peculiar sensation, a sort of pressure in her mind, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. The passage opened suddenly into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness above. But it wasn't the chamber's size that made Thera freeze in her tracks. There, suspended in the translucent ice wall before her, was something impossible. At first glance, it appeared to be a serpentine form nearly 40 meters long, with iridescent scales visible beneath the ice's cloudy surface. As Thera's light played across its form, she could make out massive folded wings and a row of crystalline spines running along its length. The creature's head was elegant and fierce, with swept-back horns and closed eyes that seemed impossibly large. "This can't be real," Thera whispered, her words echoing in the chamber. She had studied xenobiology her entire life, but nothing in Earth's databases matched what she was seeing. The creature looked like something out of ancient mythology, a dragon, preserved perfectly in Europa's ice. As she approached, her instruments began registering increasingly complex biological readings. The creature wasn't simply preserved, it was alive, in some form of suspended animation. And as she drew closer, the pressure in her mind intensified until it became almost uncomfortable. "Help me." The words weren't spoken. They appeared in her mind with such clarity that Thera stumbled backward, her heart racing. The creature in the ice remained motionless, but she could feel it now, a consciousness, ancient and vast, reaching out to her with desperate intensity. "Please. I have slept too long." Thera's hands shook as she set up her research equipment. Everything she had been taught about first contact protocols told her to retreat, to call this into the Galactic Security Council. But she had learned the hard way that the Council's fear of the unknown often led to destruction rather than understanding. It was why she had been exiled, after all, for daring to suggest that the aggressive behavior of the Centaurian spore mines had been a response to human fear rather than inherent hostility. "I hear you," she said aloud, not knowing if speech was necessary. "But I don't know how to help you. The ice. The ice is not what binds me. Fear bound me here. Hatred. The ice came after." Images flooded Thera's mind, fragments of memories that weren't her own. A civilization that had once spanned the stars. A species that could fold space with thought alone, that had watched over younger races as they took their first steps into space. And then fear, as those races grew powerful enough to push back against their guardians. The creature, she could feel that it was female, though such terms seemed inadequate, had been one of the last of her kind. She had fled to Europa, using the last of her strength to enter a healing sleep as her pursuers gave up the hunt. "How long?" Thera asked, though she dreaded the answer. "Time means little in sleep. But by your measurements, perhaps 50,000 of your years." Thera's scientific mind raced with the implications. An advanced species that predated human civilization, with capabilities that seemed to defy known physics. The Council would see it as a threat, just as they saw all-powerful unknowns as threats. But as she stood there, feeling the gentle probe of the creature's thoughts against her own, Thera knew she couldn't let that happen. This being had reached out to her, trusted her. And in that mental touch, she sensed no malice, only a profound loneliness and a desire to understand what the galaxy had become in her long absence. "I'm going to help you," Thera decided, already calculating what equipment she would need. "But you have to understand, the world you're going to wake up to isn't the one you left behind. Things have changed. Humanity, we're not always kind to things we don't understand. Neither were they, in the time before. But you are different. You question. You seek to understand rather than control. That is why I called to you, Thra Blackwood. That is why you could hear me when others passed by, deaf to my dreams. As if in response to those words, the ice began to crack, not from any external force, but from within. The dragon's massive form shifted slightly, and one enormous eye opened, glowing with an inner light that turned the entire chamber amethyst. Thra knew that in helping this creature, she was likely sacrificing any chance of ever returning to Earth's scientific community. But as she stood there, watching ancient ice give way to something older still, she realized she didn't care. Some discoveries were worth any price. My name, the voice in her mind said softly, is Nyx. And I have so much to show you, Thra Blackwood. The ice continued to crack, and with it, Thra felt the first tremors of a change that would reshape humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos. Whether that change would bring wonder or war remained to be seen, but there was no turning back now. The dragon was awakening. 3 days after Nyx's awakening, Thra stood at the viewport of her research station, watching the massive creature glide through Europa's thin atmosphere. The dragon's iridescent scales shifted colors with each movement, from deep purple to brilliant azure, while the crystalline spines along her back caught Jupiter's light like prisms. Nyx's rehabilitation had been remarkably swift. Once freed from the ice, her species' natural ability to adapt to different environments had allowed her to quickly regain her strength. But it was the mental changes that fascinated Thra most. Their initial telepathic connection had evolved into something deeper, a sharing of thoughts and memories that left her breathless with wonder. Your kind fears what lies in the deep, Nyx's thoughts whispered in Thra's mind. Yet you built this place, alone on the edge of space. You are contradictory. Humans often are, Thra replied, smiling. She had grown used to these philosophical observations. We fear the unknown, yet we're driven to explore it. Sometimes, though, fear wins out. A shadow passed over the viewport as Nyx banked closer to the station. Like with the Centaurian spore mines. I saw that memory in you. You tried to understand them, and your people punished you for it. Thra's smile faded. Her exile still stung, even after all these years. The council decided they were too dangerous to study. Better to quarantine their entire system than risk contamination. I argued that we could communicate with them if we just. The station's proximity alarm cut her off, blaring suddenly through the silence. Thra rushed to the monitoring station, her heart sinking as she saw the readings. 3 council vessels had just emerged from hyperspace near Jupiter's orbit. They come with weapons and fear, Nyx observed, her mental voice tinged with sadness. Just as they did before. Thra's hands flew over the controls, erasing research logs and encrypting her personal notes. They must have detected your energy signature. I thought we'd have more time before they noticed, but... The communication system crackled to life. Research Station Europa, 7, this is Council Enforcement Vessel Arbitrator. You are harboring an unregistered Class A xenological entity. Power down your shields and prepare for boarding. Thra felt Nyx's consciousness brush against her own, sharing memories of similar moments thousands of years ago, her kind being hunted, feared, driven to the edges of space by races they had once protected. We cannot let them take us. They will study, dissect, try to understand what cannot be understood through force. I won't let them, Thra promised, already moving to the station's small hangar where her research vessel was docked. It wasn't much, a retrofitted mining ship she'd modified for scientific surveys, but it was fast. But we have to leave. Now. The council ships were closing in, their weapon systems powered up. Thra had seen what those weapons could do, she'd witnessed the quarantine of the Centaurian system, watched as automated platforms were set up to destroy any ship that tried to enter or leave. There is another way, Nyx suggested, her mental voice growing stronger. My kind did not travel as yours do, pushing through space with machines. We folded it, stepped through the places between stars. Images flooded Thera's mind, concepts her human brain could barely comprehend, geometries that seemed to twist in impossible ways. You can still do that? Even after so long in the ice? With help. Your mind, joined with mine. Your understanding of what space has become, my knowledge of how to bend it. Together. The station shuddered as the council ships locked on with tractor beams. Warning lights flashed across every console as the shields began to fail. Thera made her decision. She ran to the airlock, pulling on her thermal suit as quickly as she could. How do we do this? Open your mind completely. Do not fear what you see. And most importantly, trust. Thera cycled through the airlock just as the first council boarding shuttles attached to the station. She pushed off into space, watching as Nyx's massive form descended toward her. Those impossible eyes fixed on her, glowing with inner fire, and Thera felt their minds merge more fully than ever before. The universe shifted. Thera saw space as Nyx saw it, not as an empty void, but as a fabric that could be folded, gathered like cloth until two distant points touched. She felt Nyx's power flow through her, refined and focused by her human capacity for precise calculation. Together, they reached out and pulled. Reality twisted around them. The council ships, Europa, Jupiter itself, all seemed to stretch and then snap back like a rubber band. When Thera's vision cleared, they were somewhere else entirely. Below them, an orange-purple gas giant swirled with storms she didn't recognize, orbited by moons she'd never seen in any star chart. The place between stars is not safe for long periods, Nyx explained as Thera gasped for breath, her mind reeling from the experience. But it will serve to hide us while we plan. Plan what? Thera asked, though she already knew the answer. She could feel it in Nyx's thoughts, a mixture of hope and determination. To find others of my kind. They sleep, as I did, scattered across the dark places of this galaxy. And to show your people that understanding is better than fear. That some bridges are worth building, no matter how many try to burn them. Thera looked out at the alien system spread before them, her heart racing with both terror and excitement. She was now truly a fugitive, from the council, from everything she'd ever known. But as she felt Nyx's consciousness intertwined with her own, she knew she'd made the right choice. Sometimes, the greatest discoveries required the courage to leap into the unknown. And Thera Blackwood had always been good at leaping. Shall we begin? Nyx asked, her mental voice warm with affection. Yes, Thera replied. Show me everything. The frontier outpost of Haven's End was exactly the kind of place where questions weren't asked, which made it perfect for fugitives. Built into an asteroid at the edge of chartered space, it was a maze of cramped corridors and makeshift habitats, home to smugglers, exiles, and others who preferred to avoid council attention. Thera sat in a dimly lit bar, nursing a synthetic drink while keeping one eye on the entrance. After 3 weeks of jumping between systems using Nyx's space-folding abilities, they had finally picked up a signal they'd been searching for, energy readings similar to those Nyx had given off while in stasis. The ones who hunt us are here, Nyx's thoughts touched Thera's mind. The dragon was hidden in a nearby asteroid field, her natural ability to regulate her body temperature making her nearly invisible to sensors. 3 ships, bearing council markings but different. Thera casually glanced at her datapad, which showed the sensor feeds Nyx was sharing. The ships were definitely council design, but they lacked official identification beacons. Black Ops vessels, then. The council was trying to catch them quietly. Interesting company you're keeping these days, Blackwood. Thera managed not to jump at the voice. A tall woman with silver cybernetic eyes slid into the seat across from her, Commander Rook, formerly of Council Special Operations, now running her own intelligence network on the frontier. They had history, most of it complicated. Rook, Thera acknowledged. I didn't think this was your kind of place. It's not. But when I hear that a respected xenobiologist has suddenly gone rogue, along with readings that match nothing in known space. Rook smiled thinly. Let's just say my curiosity was piqued. She knows more than she's saying, Nyx observed. Her mind is guarded, but there are cracks. She's afraid, not of us, but of what she's discovered. Thera took another sip of her drink. And what exactly do you think you know? Rook leaned forward, her cybernetic eyes whirring as they adjusted focus. I know that 16 years ago, the Council found something in deep space that scared them badly enough to create a whole new Black Ops division. I know that division has been searching for something, or things, ever since. And I know that 3 weeks ago, you managed to disappear from Europa in a way that defied every known law of physics. The bar's atmosphere seemed to grow heavier. In the corner, a group of miners watched their table with poorly concealed interest. Hired muscle, probably, Rook's backup. Why are you telling me this? Thera asked quietly. Because whatever you found, the Council is willing to do anything to contain it. They've activated the Omega Protocol. Thera felt Nyx's alarm spike through their connection. The dragon had accessed the memory as soon as Rook spoke. The Omega Protocol was the Council's nuclear option, authorizing the complete destruction of any system deemed to pose an existential threat. Ask her about the others, Nyx urged. If they found one of my sleeping kin. The division you mentioned, Thera said carefully. What did they find 16 years ago? Rook's expression turned grim. A creature, preserved in the ice of a rogue planet. They tried to wake it, study it. The results were messy. The creature died, but not before it transmitted something. A signal that reached across space. Since then, they've been finding more of them, hidden in the dark places between stars. They don't try to wake them anymore. They just destroy them. Thera felt Nyx's grief and rage wash through her like a physical force. More of her kind, murdered in their sleep by frightened humans who didn't even try to understand them. The signal, Thera pressed. What was it? A warning, they think. Or a summons. The translation was never clear. But after that, the Council realized there were more of these beings out there, scattered across the galaxy. They've been systematically hunting them down ever since, trying to eliminate what they see as a potential threat. A warning, yes, Nyx's thoughts were heavy with sorrow. But also a promise. We swore that if humanity proved itself worthy, we would wake and share our knowledge. If they proved themselves ruled by fear. She didn't finish the thought, but Thera felt the implications. Nyx's kind had been guardians once, watching over younger races. They could be terrible in their judgment if they found those races wanting. The ship's in orbit, Thera said. They're here to destroy another sleeper, aren't they? Rook nodded. They tracked the energy signature to this system. They'll find it within days, and when they do. She spread her hands. I may not work for the Council anymore, but I still have contacts. They're scared, Blackwood. Whatever your friend is, whatever she can do, it terrifies them. Fear leads to poor decisions, Thera replied, thinking of her own exile. We have to stop them. We. Rook's cybernetic eyes narrowed. I'm just here to warn you. Getting involved in this kind of operation would be suicide. She lies, Nyx observed. She wants to help, but needs convincing. Show her. Thera made a decision. She reached across the table and grabbed Rook's hand. Through her connection with Nyx, she pushed a fraction of what she had experienced, the wonder of seeing space as Nyx saw it, the beauty of a consciousness vast enough to span millennia, the potential for humanity to grow beyond its fears. Rook gasped, her cybernetic eyes flickering as she processed the input. When Thera let go, the commander sat back, breathing heavily. That's impossible, Rook whispered. That's just a fraction of what they could teach us, Thera said. If we let them live. If we learn to understand instead of fear. Rook was quiet for a long moment, her enhanced eyes staring into middle distance as she processed what she'd experienced. Finally, she focused on Thera. The Black Ops ships have a weakness in their sensor arrays, she said quietly. And I might know someone who can get us their patrol schedules. She chooses wisdom over fear, Nyx approved. Perhaps there is hope for your kind after all. Thera allowed herself a small smile. They had an ally now, and a chance to save another of Nyx's kind. But as she felt Nyx's consciousness brush against her own, she knew this was just the beginning. The real battle, the fight to change humanity's path from fear to understanding, was still to come. The Black Ops facility hung in the void between Jupiter's moons, its dark hull absorbing what little sunlight reached it. From their hiding spot behind Callisto, Thera watched through Nyx's enhanced vision as supply ships came and went, each one heavily armed despite their civilian markings. 3 months had passed since their meeting with Rook on Haven's End. In that time, they'd managed to save 2 more of Nyx's sleeping kin, Helios, found in the rings of a gas giant, and Selene, hidden in the core of a dead star. But for each one they saved, they discovered the remains of others, destroyed by the Council's forces before they could be awakened. They keep something here, Nyx's thoughts carried an edge of pain. One of my kind lives within those walls, but their mind is wrong. Broken. Are you sure about this? Rook's voice crackled through Thera's comm. The former commander's ship lurked nearby, running dark to avoid detection. Once we go in, there's no turning back. Thera checked her suit's systems one final time. They're experimenting on one of them, Rook. We have to know what they're doing. The prey becomes the hunter, Helios's deeper thoughts joined their connection. The male dragon's massive form shifted slightly, his golden scales reflecting starlight. As it should be. The plan was simple, though far from safe. While Helios and Selene created a distraction by appearing near Europa, Thera and Nyx would slip into the facility using the space-folding ability they'd perfected together. Rook's codes would get them through the initial security, and after that. Ready? Thera asked, though she could feel Nyx's anticipation through their bond. Always, dear one. The universe bent around them. Thera had grown used to the sensation now, the way reality seemed to ripple and fold, bringing distant points together like a piece of paper being creased. They emerged inside the facility's cargo bay, Nyx immediately shrinking her form to match the confined space, a trick they discovered she could perform briefly. Alarms blared in the distance as Helios and Selene began their attack on the Europa outpost. Thera moved quickly through the corridors, following the pull of Nyx's consciousness toward their imprisoned kin. The facility was surprisingly empty, most of the personnel must have been deployed to deal with the distraction. They found the laboratory on the lowest level. The sight within made Thera's blood run cold. A dragon lay suspended in a massive chamber, its once beautiful scales dull and scarred. Its eyes were open but vacant, and dozens of cables ran from its body to surrounding machines. But worst of all was the emptiness Thera felt through her connection with Nyx, where there should have been a consciousness vast as space itself, there was only scattered fragments, broken pieces of thought swirling in darkness. Sister, Nyx's mental voice was thick with horror. What have they done to you? They've been trying to weaponize it, said a familiar voice. Thera spun to see Director Voss of the Galactic Security Council stepping from the shadows, flanked by armed guards. The severe-looking woman smiled without warmth. Remarkable creatures, Voss continued. The ability to fold space itself, to share thoughts across light years, imagine those capabilities harnessed for humanity's defense. Of course, we had to find a way to control them first. To break their will without destroying their potential. You're monsters, Thera snarled, feeling Nyx's rage building beside her. We're survivors, Voss corrected. These beings once ruled the galaxy, Blackwood. They deemed themselves our guardians, our judges. They would have kept humanity contained, controlled, all in the name of their greater wisdom. She gestured to the broken dragon. Now they serve us, as all things must. You understand nothing, Nix's thoughts broadcast powerfully enough that even Voss flinched. We watched, we waited, we hoped you would grow beyond your fears. Instead, you prove yourselves unworthy with each passing moment. The facility shuddered as distant explosions rang out. Helios and Selene had apparently reached the station. Voss's guards raised their weapons, but before they could fire, reality twisted around them. Nix had folded space within the room itself, causing the guards to appear outside in the corridor. It's too late, Voss said, backing away. The procedure is complete. Even if you free her, she'll never be what she was. We've made sure of that. Thera reached the control panel, her fingers flying over the controls as she began shutting down the systems holding the imprisoned dragon. There's always hope, she said firmly. You tried to break her, but you don't understand what they truly are. What they can survive. Sister, Nix called again, pressing her consciousness against the fragments of the broken dragon's mind. Remember who you are. Remember what we were meant to be. The injured dragon's eyes flickered. Through her connection with Nix, Thera felt something stirring in that shattered consciousness, not thoughts exactly, but emotions. Recognition. Longing. And underneath it all, a spark of something that felt like hope. As the restraints fell away, as Helios and Selene's attack reached its crescendo, as Voss fled deeper into the facility, Thera realized they had reached a turning point. The Council's crimes could no longer be hidden. The time for hiding, for quiet resistance, was over. Now it was time for revolution. We wake the others, Nix declared, her thoughts reaching out to touch her wounded sister's mind. All of them. And then humanity must choose, to grow beyond their fears, or to face judgment for what they have done. Thera placed her hand on Nix's scaled neck, feeling the power thrumming beneath. Whatever comes next, she said softly, we face it together. The wounded dragon's eyes focused suddenly, burning with renewed awareness. And across the galaxy, in ice caves and gas giants and dead stars, ancient beings began to stir from their slumber. The judgment of the Guardians was at hand. From the observation deck of Haven's End, Thera watched as dragons filled the sky. They came in all colors, emerald, sapphire, gold, and colors human eyes had no names for, their scales catching starlight as they moved through space with impossible grace. In the 3 weeks since they'd rescued Nix's tortured sister from the Council facility, more of their kind had awakened from their ancient slumber than anyone had expected. The injured dragon, who had taken the name Aurora, floated nearest to the station. Her scales were beginning to regain their luster, though the scars remained. More importantly, her mind was healing, fragments of consciousness slowly knitting back together through the combined efforts of her kin. The Council ship's approach, Nix's thoughts touched Thera's mind. 100 vessels, perhaps more. They mean to end this here. Let them come, Rook said from beside Thera, her cybernetic eyes tracking movement in the distance. Half their fleet has already refused to fire on the dragons. Their control is slipping. It was true. As news of the Council's secret program had spread, resistance had grown. The footage Rook had released, showing the torture of Aurora, revealing the systematic destruction of sleeping dragons, had sparked outrage across human space. More and more people were beginning to question whether fear should guide humanity's path among the stars. They are afraid, Helios observed, his golden form cutting through space like a comet. But beneath the fear, there is wonder. Hope. The seed of understanding grows. The Council fleet emerged from hyperspace in a burst of light, weapons already charged. Leading them was Voss's flagship, its black hull bristling with experimental weapons designed specifically to hurt dragons. This is Director Voss of the Galactic Security Council, her voice boomed across all frequencies. You harbor entities that pose an existential threat to humanity. Surrender them, or we will be forced to take action. Thera stepped up to the communication panel, but before she could respond, she felt a gentle pressure in her mind. Aurora, speaking directly for the first time since her rescue. Let me, the wounded dragon's thoughts were still fragmented, but carried immense power. They should hear from one they tried to break. Aurora's massive form moved forward, her scarred scales catching the light. When she spoke, her thoughts reached not just the council ships, but every human mind within range. You feared us, Aurora's mental voice rang with both pain and compassion. You found us sleeping and saw not guardians but weapons. You tried to break us, control us, destroy us. And in doing so, you proved yourselves the very thing you feared, a species ruled by terror, lashing out at what you do not understand. The council ships held position, weapons locked but not firing. Through her connection with Nyx, Thera could feel the confusion and awe radiating from their crews. But we see something else in you now, Aurora continued. Those who fought to free me. Those who chose understanding over fear. Those who look at us with wonder instead of terror. You stand at a crossroads, humanity. Choose wisely. You were meant to be contained. Vasa's voice cracked with emotion. Humanity must be free to choose its own path. And so you shall be. Nyx joined the telepathic broadcast, her thoughts intertwining with Aurora's. But choice comes with consequence. Wisdom with responsibility. We offer you partnership, not subjugation. Knowledge, not control. Thera felt a subtle shift in the minds touching hers, Helios, Selene, and dozens of other dragons adding their consciousness to the message. Together, they shared visions of what could be, humans and dragons working together, exploring the deepest reaches of space, learning from each other, growing beyond the limitations of fear. The first council ship powered down its weapons. Then another. And another. No. Vasa's voice rang out. I won't let you control us. Her flagship's main weapon began to charge, its barrel glowing with deadly energy. But before she could fire, reality folded around her ship. It reappeared a moment later, weapons disabled, surrounded by dragons whose scales shimmered with power. We do not seek to control, Aurora's thoughts were gentle but firm. But neither will we allow fear to guide your species to destruction. The time of hiding is over. Now is the time for growth. Over the next hours, as the council fleet stood down and negotiations began, Thera felt a profound shift in the human consciousness around her. Fear still existed, it always would, but it was being tempered by something stronger, hope. What happens now? She asked Nyx privately, watching as dragons and humans began their first tentative diplomatic interactions. Now we build something new, Nyx replied, her mental voice warm with affection. Together. As it always should have been. Aurora drifted closer, her once broken mind growing stronger by the day. From the ashes of fear, understanding blooms. From understanding, wisdom grows. Thera looked out at the scene before her, dragons and human ships moving in harmony, the first steps toward a future neither species could have achieved alone. She thought of how far they'd come from that ice cave on Europa, how many battles they'd fought, how much had changed. The dragons had awoken not to pass judgment, but to offer partnership. Humanity had faced its fears and chosen to grow beyond them. And in doing so, both species had found something precious, hope for a future unlimited by the boundaries of fear. A new dawn, Nyx's thoughts wrapped around Thera's mind like a warm embrace. For all of us. Thera smiled, placing her hand against the viewport where Nyx's massive form floated just outside. Together, they watched the first light of a new age begin to shine. The end was just the beginning.